Some of our regular viewers might remember that in December, the Strait Area Mutual Aid Association made a presentation to Richmond Council's Committee of the Whole meeting. At that presentation, members of the association talked about the importance of having new dry hydrants around the county so that the county's volunteer firefighters could use them in times of an emergency. At the time, there were only 2 dry hydrants that were available to Richmond County's volunteer firefighters. One of them is shared with a mutual aid association in Sydney. So, Richmond CAO Don Marchand commissioned the county's emergency services coordinator, Brett Hershey, to investigate how 24 other municipalities across the province have dealt with this issue. So here's CAO Marchand at the most recent regular Richmond Council meeting, explaining what Hershey found in his report, and then we'll hear from Richmond councillors and Warden Amanda Mumberket about how the county plans to go forward in dealing with this issue.
We managed to get 24 responses from counties across the province to indicate what their method of dealing with dry hydrants involved, and there were the majority of them were within the 2 options that provided that fire departments would do it themselves, or there was a hybrid model. So that meant that there were fire departments that would either request funding or the county would provide funding for these dry hydrants and help out the fire departments to install these hydrants. And the hybrid models, there was various levels of participation on the municipality's part. In a lot of cases, they would provide minimum funding and then hand over these dry hydrants to the fire departments with no further obligation regarding maintenance, short-term or long-term. And then some were a little bit more involved, and they would provide for a lot more funding and not take the minor maintenance, but any major maintenance they would partake in. So 50% of the fire department, 50% of the responses were solely fire department responsibility, and just about 50% was in a hybrid model, but of course with a lot of restrictions, and a lot had no further obligation.
I have no problem with the splitting the cost of the installation. I have a problem with the volunteers of the fire department installing. I think if we look at the CVRM, they're one of the counties that actually did the installation and I guess covered the cost. Again, some of our fire departments do have very good, I guess, resources or funding available, and I guess we can work with them to come to a solution of cost. But I believe it's on the county to make sure that they're all installed the same and adequately. And I feel that I disagree with Mr. Hershey's recommendation to have the fire departments be responsible for the installation.
Yeah, I think we've got some departments that are probably capable financially of getting that done, but we've got others that aren't. It's the way it is, and until we sort some of this out, I think I'd be open to, in budget deliberations, looking at possibility of a hybrid model, whereas maybe there's some kind of grants available, and maybe we could instruct Mr. Hershey to find out any and all options, possibly federally or provincially, that financial aid that might be there for the departments, because some of them, even if there was, let's say, financial aid from the province, they may not be able to come up with the rest regardless anyway, and maybe that's where we can fill in the gap.
For me, I would agree with Deputy Warden Digdon that it shouldn't fall on a volunteer fire department to be building these dry hydrants, and like Councillor Brent Sampson mentioned, some of them can afford to fund these dry hydrants, and some can't. So let's look at it at budget deliberations. But as far as looking, putting the responsibility on the fire department to build these things, no, I would agree with Councillor Digdon on that situation. Yeah, it shouldn't fall on the fire departments for sure.
District 3 Councillor Melanie Sampson was unavailable to attend the council meeting last week, but she did participate by phone. While Sampson applauded the research and recommendations provided by Emergency Services Coordinator Brent Hershey, she suggested that Council should look beyond Hershey's final recommendation.
I would agree with my fellow councillors that, probably some type of a hybrid method would be most suitable for us. Especially given that across the province, the statistics do support that that's a viable option. Our original motion, my original motion was that we were looking for a recommendation regarding the placement of hydrants in the county, including things such as responsibility, which was addressed here, but, costing, regulations, design, geographic mapping, maintenance plans, I think that they were touched on in terms of his recommendation, but I do think that there is a bigger picture here, and just sort of including everything regarding regulations, easement, design, I suspect he was including those all in the idea of installation. So I certainly would, I would certainly welcome a wider conversation and through budget deliberations in regards to what type of a hybrid model we perhaps could look at to ensure that we have, good water sources to support our fire department.
I have to say, Mr. Hershey did a fantastic job of assembling an information package in a very short period of time, mind you, for municipal council to review. I think we weren't in full agreement with his recommendation by any means. It was interesting to hear the comments from around the table about, the nature of our fire departments being volunteer, the desire to help our volunteer firefighting organizations. So I think, I think the best course of action was the outcome of this evening's meeting, where we're considering this from not just it's not just about money, it's also about safety, but it's also about having good policy based around it. And so we'll be looking forward to that at our next committee meeting.
It just seems like we keep passing the buck, and it really does, from, I guess, fire department to council and council back to fire department. And it's time that, it's time that we engage as new council and, definitely sit down, whether it's with several fire chiefs or with the EMO or whatever we have to do to get the ball rolling.
Basically, what I heard was that they wanted to do more than what was in the recommendation. So what that will look like in the end, I mean, it's been referred to budget. We've got a lot of priorities to consider at the budget, right, at budget time. But it was they've made it part of the priority listing, and I think that's a very positive sign. I think when it comes to how we apply that budget, the detail will be in what comes out of that policy and bylaw committee, right? And so I don't know that it's more, but especially with reference to Councillor Melanie Sampson's request to look at what other municipalities are doing to see if there's some policy we could learn from out there now, because what we had was kind of a summary report, so maybe we could get some actual documentation. So I think there's a willingness to learn from what's going on elsewhere, but also a desire to right-size it for Richmond County.